Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Monday. Once again, Monday, June, not July, but June 17th. Just checking to see whether I knew, what the date was. June 17th, 2024. Time for another week of shows. It's getting to be summertime. The heat increasing. And what a big weekend. Trifecta of a weekend for me. Flag Day, huge in my family. Flag Day was a thing. Martha Annalito, I'm sure, she was already off her rocker. She didn't get back onto the rocker at any time, I'm sure, during the weekend, because it was just too crazy a time for her celebration of Flag Day. And in between, anniversary for us here at KITM World Headquarters, so that was fun as well. And then Father's Day, of course, and I'm one of those too, so that was great. Maybe you had a terrific Father's Day. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. We'll find out. That'll be in the news today. Send us your report, and we can let everybody know how your Father's Day was. It was nice, pleasant weather. It is getting warm, as I said. Heat dome headed for the East Coast at some point soon. So we've gone straight into we'll go straight into the high 90s and stay there, because that's kind of where the planet is these days. All right, much to catch up on as usual. Lots to happening over the weekend. Much of which I attempted to ignore. Some of which seeped through anyway. I don't think I actually heard anything more about the Alitos. They kept a low profile for Flag Day. Maybe that's a religious day for them, and they spent the day in church. I don't know. But didn't inject themselves back into the news. Donald Trump, of course, that's what he thrives on. It's campaign season, and he's looking to grab as much cash as he possibly can, so he's making a nuisance of himself. I guess over the weekend he went to Detroit, which, as you know, he has said a number of times is a hellhole, and any white people that go there will be killed instantly, I assume. Probably by looking at fentanyl, like the cops have that happen to them frequently. Anyway, he decided he was going to go, and because he's doing outreach, he would do an event at a black church. But which, is a thing to do as a politician, as you go to Detroit. Sure, why not, right? Well, then, of course, the expectation is that at some point when you go to the church, the people in the church will be black because it's a black church. But not this Trump black church. I guess so many Trump supporters came, or he bussed them in, or whatever, that all the photos of the event, all the pews are filled with white people who I'm sure were welcomed as visitors for whatever reason. You know how it is in churches. Sometimes these things don't make a great deal of sense, but you're instructed to welcome the stranger. What happened to all the black congregants? I don't know. Whether they just I'm not going to stay here. It's full of white MAGA people. Or I'm going to be nice and give up my seat to these visitors. Anyway, there they were, getting their pictures taken. The same elderly couple seems to show up to all these events all the time wearing those. Have you seen them before? I think we have maybe talked about them on the show before. Wearing their Blacks for Trump t-shirts. I just not really sure I understand this phenomenon. They appear to be white. I guess you never know for sure. But at any rate, this same white elderly couple that I've seen a couple of times, usually decked out in other MAGA gear and then wearing the Blacks for Trump t-shirt, which, I was on social media discussing it a little bit, just briefly making a comment on it because it's all it deserves. But I'm kind of wondering, I guess there's no explaining it, but I just sort of wondering about the mindset of, one, deciding to wear that, and two, wearing that and then going out and in public and then finding that nobody was actually giving you a great deal of trouble or threatening your physical safety. Like they're not getting clobbered every time they go out wearing these shirts, or I assume they would stop doing that, or you'd hear about a shooting somewhere. But then they still, of course, spend, I assume, as MAGA people, spend the bulk of their time worrying about black crime, so-called black crime, black on white crime in particular. And they're standing there antagonizing the community that they're standing in the middle of, and no one's laid a hand on them because they're a bunch of old weirdos. I mean, there's really no reason to do something like that. So I don't know. I don't know how they reconcile that, but they may not reconcile it at all. I don't know. It was just an interesting thought to have in the middle of it, of an otherwise not interesting thing happening. But let's see. In addition to that, of course, plenty of other news to round up. There was some weekend press time wasted by was it Politico on the question of, as they put it, what happened? What happened to Glenn Youngkin? Of course, I live here in Virginia, and I know that nothing happened, and nothing was ever going to happen, because he wasn't really a thing, and he didn't really have a thing going on. He caught the upswing of Chris Rufo's CRT / trans student mania and rode it to victory, beating up along the way on poor old Loudoun County and making it look like we were full of reactionary racists when, in fact, he got clobbered here as well. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was a weird thing, and I think I put the article aside. Lots of chatter about it. But, yeah, the bottom line is nothing happened to Glenn Youngkin. He was never really destined to do anything. It was just a punditry bubble sort of a thing. I don't know. He's a successful-ish guy. He's got money. He's won in Virginia, which, I guess pundits still think, well, it's trending blue, and yet he's red. And so he won, so there must be some magical formula by which this type of person, whatever type of person he is, has cross-aisle reach. And they were looking at
run
him
against
said,
Terry McAuliffe.
I mean,
that's your magic formula.
That's the formula. Greg Dworkin, by the way, I think everybody knows that big ringy-dingy noise is Greg. I don't have to tell you, but I will tell you. Well, he'll tell you. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. One, you win an election narrowly. I mean, it was not razor thin, but it was by no means a mandate. And then they were looking at him like, I don't know, he wears a red vest. That's sort of mild-mannered
looking. Oh, my God, you beat Terry McAuliffe. You must be Superman.
Yeah, so, that's it. And he won the race and then proceeded to lose the control of the legislature, was therefore unable to do anything. And then I think he tried to put together a sort of face-saving bipartisan economic development thing with a big stadium deal to move I don't even know who he was trying to move. The Commanders, I guess. You remember the old Washington Breadsticks football
I think it was the Wizards.
You know what? I don't even know. Maybe, but I knew that he proposed it and kind of instantly. Well, one thing about Northern Virginia. What probably would you be your guess concerned everybody about sticking a stadium complex? Yes, that's right. Exactly. This is a place where, in the middle of all the mania about transgender issues, Northern Virginia was electing one of the first openly transgender state legislators who ran not on that, but rather on traffic issues. And people said, yeah, a stadium in the middle of my commute? I think maybe I don't want that. And then he wasn't able to do it. Boom.
That's what I learned about traffic.
Yeah.
Danica.
Probably a problem for a lot of people everywhere. Yes, that's right. And, could easily, given today's environment, have ridden that sort of claim to 15 minutes of fame of being a transgendered person, but instead said, I'm serious. My neighbors actually want this to happen, and I want to legislate. I am also this person. But
you win on being anti-traffic.
Right.
Just like in Alaska, you win by being pro-fish.
Exactly. I had a feeling. That's where we were going with this one. And if
you don't need to know anything else.
Right.
Once you've branded yourself as that, you're in.
Yeah. So it works very well.
Brilliant.
I wonder if there's traffic for fish in certain parts of Alaska. Like, do you think if the fish could vote, they would be upset about it? It's too crowded in this lake. I can't get to the worms quickly enough. Well, anyway, yeah, that's the basics of it. And Glenn Youngkin offered us nothing.
There's all sorts of traffic, salmon traffic.
Yes, trafficking in salmon.
Yeah. And you learn early on as a kid the 5 kinds of salmon, which, of course, I can't remember.
Oh,
there's chum and there's sockeye. They're all different.
Yeah, they got a range of them. I am not a big salmon eater. I'm a zero salmon eater. but it looks great. So I'm a big fan.
So
yes.
Good morning. I'm glad you noticed that Glenn Youngkin piece.
Yes.
That's certainly something that caught my eye. So, I wonder if David's going to see this one.
Yeah, I did. But I didn't put it aside, actually, for some reason. I looked at it and said, that's dumb. But, there's more to it than that.
Well, I also have some dumb stuff. And so all the listeners know this is a completely, totally professional podcast. So that when I say to David, I have 2 short clips to see if you could play, and I flag them in the long list I sent you that you haven't seen beforehand,
right?
Because we carefully coordinate everything we do prior to getting on the air like professionals.
At 8:56, I say, oh, look, all right, here comes some stories.
One of them is 26 seconds, and the other is 18 seconds, but they're important, so I don't know if you could play them on the other computer and get them all set up and all that sort of thing. I will start working on it, yes. Talk about something that doesn't have any of those. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the point, right? Okay. We're professionally doing this so that the audience doesn't know that I'm just chatting so that David has time to do this.
All right, let's see.
This is all sparked by the main story I had in the Pundit Roundup today, which is in its way a remarkable story, because here's
some
the
remarks
headline
on it. Okay.
This is the Associated Press, and it says Trump challenges Biden to a cognitive test but confuses the name of the doctor who tested him.
Okay.
Okay, so it happens. Like he gets Ronnie Jackson mixed up with Ronnie Johnson. I told you the other day, everybody's named Johnson. There's that Bill Johnson guy who retired from the Senate that sparked the special Ohio 6 election where the Democrat only lost by 9 in a Trump 172 plus district, But everybo's named Johnson, just like in the old Blazing Saddles movie.
Good news.
But his real name is Ronnie Jackson, and Trump couldn't remember this because, he's addled. That's not remarkable. We all know this. There's lots of examples. But the Associated Press said it.
That's
and so
good.
For at least 24 hours, the press is playing, if we made this issue about Biden, and they did, then maybe we should make it about Trump as well. For example, I have this piece from Politico, the same Politico that discovered that Glenn Youngkin isn't who he said he was. Politico says, Biden knows exactly what he is doing and will likely win elections, says German Chancellor. In an interview on the sidelines of the G7 summit, Olaf Scholz made assurances that Biden can provide critical leadership as global leaders face a complex web of mounting issues. He indicated strong support and confidence in Biden's leadership amid, and let me quote this, mounting concerns, end quote, about Biden's mental acuity and specter of former Donald Trump's return to office. Now, the only mounting concerns came from known liar Kevin McCarthy and partisan liar Mike Johnson, who isn't as known a liar. There's another Johnson there. They're all named Johnson, I'm telling you.
All right.
There are mounting concerns. Everybody who works with him says this is garbage. People like John Harwood, who have interviewed Biden, says this is garbage. Biden was just on a podcast for an hour, and it was fine. Other people have interviewed him, and he's fine. So there aren't mounting concerns. It's BS.
Oh, they're
nonetheless.
Okay. What if there were lessening concerns? That would be even worse.
Just remember, every accusation by a Republican is a convention. So can you play any of those clips?
Yes, I believe I can. I got to turn on the volume. Which one do we want to do first here?
Oh, the first one first, the 26-second one.
Got it. Okay, this is the speech at Turning Point Action, Trump.
Well, do that one.
Oh, okay.
And then the CNN one.
Oh, all right. Well, I can do them in any order you want.
Yeah, do it. Just do it.
Okay. All right. Got all the volume? Yeah, all right. That's right. All right, here we go.
So we can't let these people destroy our country like this. I mean, they're going crazy. Today you read where they don't want to have any water in your dishwasher. So your dishwasher won't work.
Yeah, I read that,
and they think that's good. So what you do is you keep having it go on and on and on. The electric bill is 10 times more than the water. And these are areas that have so much water, they don't know what to do with it. They're flooding. They're floodplains. They have so much water in many cases.
Yeah.
Now, I hope that made sense to you, because it didn't make any sense to me.
No, I imagine that somewhere along the line somebody said maybe we could use less water in a dishwasher, and he associates that with his low flush toilets and low flow shower heads.
And electric batteries in tanks.
I mean, that one's nuts as
well. As
well
as electric batteries in boats. He's apparently got a fear
tanks,
of both sharks and electricity.
Yes, right. So
if you combine them, then you have the boat story. Can you play the other one?
Yeah, sure. Well, no, I'm out of electricity. As you know,
I'm out of water.
I mean, all right. Right. And I like to, and you know, they got too much water in many of these places.
And not enough water in other places, so I think we should move those states and switch them.
All right, let's see. I got to find my way back to, I see what happened. I clicked on it, and it took me to Twitter, with the new name, but it knocked me out of Pocket here. All right, let me go open a Pocket again. And in this way, all right, let's see. They're both labeled. Well, all right. Is this the one here? Let's see. CNN one is what we're looking for.
Yeah, about CEOs.
About CEOs. Come on now. Click through. Here we go. All right. Is this the one? Yes, good. I got to pause it and get the sound turned up. All right, here we go. CEOs on CNN.
Hey, some of the words that were used, you heard Andrew, meandering, all over the map, doesn't know what he's talking about, could not keep a straight thought. I mean, some in the C-suite seem reportedly baffled by the former president's incoherence during the private meeting. It is some of the words.
Okay, sorry, got it.
So what I'm trying to say here is that media is actually starting to cover this.
That is good.
It's too comprehensive. It's too all-encompassing to ignore. It's there. It's real.
Yeah. Well, he's good. I mean, this is the show he keeps putting on. And, I mean, maybe it finally backfires in a way like that they used to do back in 2016 and then even through the 2020 election. These 24-hour news cable shows, and I guess the right-wing ones will continue to do it, used to show, oh my God, he's going to have a rally. We're so excited about it. We'll even show you before the rally where no one's talking.
So back in 2016, people like me were saying, don't show Trump.
Right.
And now we're saying, show Trump.
Yeah.
What changed?
Mean, he looks terrible. He sounds terrible.
Deteriorated.
He is terrible. Yeah. So I'm glad that they are beginning to notice that. I'm sure on the right-wing channels, they just ignore it or say it's awesome. But, I mean, normies need to see that he says things like, you can't have batteries near water. And everyone has seen, you've probably read about these new dishwashers. They have no water. No, I have not read about that.
Right, and he talks about his showers, too. I take the regulator off my shower so I could have a real shower because they don't let you use water anymore.
Yeah, and everybody's like, I use water.
Or as Isaac Bailey says, this is gibberish.
Yeah. Authentic.
He often sounds like this, but Biden's cognitive health is the one being scrutinized.
Yeah.
Because major concerns, mounting concerns.
Right. And I did like the other one, that you mentioned. I don't think we had the tape of that one, but of him saying, I'm so good at my cognitive test, I can totally not actually remember the doctor who gave it to me, even though he's now a congressperson and has been all over the news. And and it's not even a hard name
Howard
to remember.
Johnson, that's his name, Howard Johnson.
Yeah, so, okay.
You all heard of Howard Johnson. Everybody knows Howard
woman,
Johnson.
person, TV, Howard Johnson. So,
which leads me to my next piece.
Wonderful. Yes.
Here that I
am happy about
discuss.
That. All right, then.
This is by Peter Winner, never Trumper, former Bush aide.
Winner. Is he
Peter
related
Weiner.
to reality?
Wehner. Weiner. Peter Winner.
Okay. I thought he might be related to reality. Winner.
The motivated ignorance of Trump supporters. Can't claim they didn't know. You said that the right-wing channels don't play this stuff. They don't need to. They know. They go to the rallies. They speak for themselves. On the morning of August 8, 2022, 30 FBI agents, and by the way, these rallies, they don't get the crowds they used to, and a lot of people walk out. And then, of course, the ones who are, dropping like flies because they're doing it in, like, Arizona.
Yeah. Well, right. But that's
I'm going to have a rally in
time.
Death Valley to make my people come.
Right. And it's been a long time issue for him is that he gets into he goes off script and people start looking at their phones or leave. And until they want him to say, I'm here for a lock her up chant. When are you going to do that?
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't do that, what do we need you for?
Right. Free bird, just play the hits.
Right. So on the morning of August 8, 2022, 30 FBI agents and 2 federal prosecutors conducted a court-authorized search of Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's Palm Beach, Florida estate. The reason, according to a 38-count indictment, was that after leaving office, Trump mishandled classified documents. On the day before the FBI obtained the search warrant, one of the agents on the case sent an email to his bosses, according to the New York Times. The FBI intends for the execution of the warrant to be handled in a professional, low-key manner and to be mindful of the optics of the search. It was, and they were.
All right. Not low-key, the chaos.
So what happens? Biden's DOJ was authorized to shoot me, says Trump. It's just been revealed that Biden's DOJ was authorized to use deadly force for their despicable raid in Mar-a-Lago. You know they're just itching to do the unthinkable. Joe Biden was locked and loaded, ready to take me out and put my family in danger.
Joe Biden was locked and loaded. Even he was going to shuffle over and shoot him.
This statement by Trump went beyond inflaming his supporters. It created a mindset that moved them closer to violence. Motivated ignorance refers to willfully blinding oneself to facts. It's choosing not to know. In many cases, for many people, knowing the truth is simply too costly, too psychologically painful, too threatening to their core identity. Nescience, Nescience, that's ignorance, is therefore incentivized. People actively decide to remain in a state of ignorance.
Yes.
I spelled out the word because it's a new one for me.
Yeah, I haven't heard that
usually
one.
Use.
Thank you for telling me. It
but
means
Peter
ignorance.
Winter is, very articulate and erudite.
Yes.
Probably wears a monocle and speaks with a British accent.
Well, la-di-da.
Tush. So if they are presented with strong arguments against a position they hold or compelling evidence that disproves the narrative they embrace, they will reject them. Doing so fends off the psychological distress of the realization they've been lying to themselves and to others. So he's talking about why MAGA people are the way they are.
Yes, all right.
In the case of MAGA world, he writes, the lies that Trump supporters believe or say they believe are obviously untrue and obviously destructive. When you say to yourself, how could they not know this? They do know this. They reject it because to accept it would be to admit that they've been conned, and Marks hate admitting that they've been conned.
But he's a con man. Why do they hate it so much?
I have struggled to understand how to view individuals who have not just voted for Trump, but who celebrate him, who don't merely tolerate him, but who constantly defend his lawlessness and undisguised cruelty. How should I think about people who, in other domains of their lives, are admirable human beings, but provide oxygen to his malicious movement? How complicit are people who live in an epistemic hall of mirrors and have sincerely or half-sincerely convinced themselves they are on the side of the angels? And he goes on to say, throughout my career, I've tried to resist the temptation to make unwarranted judgments about the character of people based on their political views. It's quite possible my views are misguided, so I exercise a degree of humility. For another thing, I know full well that politics forms only a part of our lives and not the most important part. But something has changed for me in the Trump era. I struggle more than I once did to wall off a person's character. The lies that MAGA world parrots are so manifestly untrue, and the Trump ethic is so manifestly cruel, they are difficult to set aside.
All right.
So one of the criteria that need to be taken into account in assessing the moral culpability of people is how absurd the lies are.
All right. Yeah, I'll go with
how
that.
intentionally they're avoiding evidence. And how consequential the lie is. It's one thing to embrace a conspiracy that is relevant only to you in your tiny corner of the world. I mean, who cares about chemtrails, really? It's an entirely different, or whether you believe in angels, it's an entirely different matter if the falsehood you're embracing and promoting is venomous, harming others, and eroding cherished principles, promoting violence and subverting American democracy. So he's done. He's one of the, along with Mike Gerson, one of the compassionate conservative, folks that made up the George W. Bush, who I don't know necessarily believed it, but these guys did. That there was a reason that conservatives needed to be compassionate. It's what led George W. Bush to do one of the only things good he did in his stint, in his part-time temp job, and that is PEPFAR. the national, international help AIDS program that was pushed by Gerson and Winter.
Oh, how extraordinarily happy they must have been.
They were and they are. And so George W. Bush should get credit for that. And so these guys mean what they say and say what they mean, and that's why they can't stand Trump.
Well, that is hard to reconcile with Trump.
You can't.
Right. So, all right. Well, terrific. To the extent that there were people waiting for that, for word from him, they got it.
Right. So he says, I understand if their moral convictions keep them from voting for Joe Biden. Some of them are cynical and know better. Others are blind. Still others, at least in the cult-like world to which they belong. And others have convinced themselves that Trump, although flawed, is the best of bad options with a binary choice. But whatever justification applies, they're giving not just their vote, but their allegiance to a man and movement that have done great harm to our country. Their collaboration needs to be named. A generation from now, and probably sooner, it'll be obvious to everybody that Trump supporters can't claim they didn't know. Okay. So I think that that's an important point, and that's why we don't waste time. When we talk about persuadable voters, we're talking about double haters, never Trumpers, and other folks who just have had enough. We're not talking about MAGA folks.
No, well, they're not persuadable, and
they're not persuadable, and they're not normal.
Yeah. I wouldn't even know how to persuade them. If you tried to convince me they were persuadable.
You'd have to go to a culty programming person.
Yeah, what would I do?
I don't tell you what to do.
I don't know. I guess there seems to be a common theme about water. I don't know whether that is it. Maybe
water,
they were
electricity, and batteries.
At some point. Yeah, right. And I could say.
And sharks. He often does sharks. I don't know why. Probably, he probably was scared by Sharknado.
Yeah, I mean, or something. Shark Week certainly freaked him out. I don't know. I wouldn't know how to persuade somebody like that. I don't think, without a lot of work or help from them, I could make up something that would register with them.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue on through the what is supposedly the news in this country. Why? Yeah, well, okay, some people are reporting real stuff. It does happen, and Donald Trump is crazy.
People were complaining that Biden wasn't going hard enough against Trump.
Sure.
And then Biden says, he's a convicted criminal.
Right.
And then they said, well, we want to see it in ads.
Okay.
So this is from Politico. Biden unloads on Trump in ad, a convicted criminal who's only out for himself. No lies here. Okay. The campaign shift to more forceful rhetoric comes ahead of the first presidential debate next week.
What? Oh, my God. You keep telling me, and I keep forgetting. I want to forget very badly.
Yeah.
All right, next week.
Soon.
Yeah, soon. June
27th.
Trump thinks it's in 2 weeks.
Actually in 10 days.
All right.
So technically not next week.
Somebody ask him.
It's the week after next week.
Mr. Trump, when's the debate? Soon, very soon. 2 weeks.
Yeah, within 6 weeks.
All right. So, yeah. What?
The ad, which will air across battleground states starting Monday, that's today, casts the election as a stark choice between a convicted criminal who's only out for himself and a president who's fighting for your family. It's full-on assault on Trump and a theme the campaign is turning to in an effort to reset Biden's re-election from a referendum on his job performance to a choice between the president and his predecessor. We all knew this was coming, and it's not waiting until the fall.
Okay.
And Biden has the money to do this, and he's doing it in the battlegrounds, and that's great.
Yeah, but
In
why
the
did he already
courtroom,
do
says
it?
the ad, we see Donald Trump for who he is. He's been convicted of 34 felonies, found liable for sexual assault, and committed financial fraud.
Yes.
I love this lawyerly language, right?
Yeah.
You convict on felonies, but in civil cases, you're found liable.
That is right.
So you can't say he's guilty of sexual assault. That's not the technical term.
Right. It could
He was
be.
found liable for sexual
That's
assault.
not what they found him to be. Yeah, they didn't try him for the one where you can say you're convicted of it.
Yeah. And he committed financial fraud.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden's been working, lowering healthcare costs and making big corporations pay their fair share. So it'll be interesting. The ad leaning hard into Trump's felony conviction. So the first time marks a reversal for the Biden campaign's approach to the former president's legal entanglements. And so, it's Politico. The fact that timing in a presidential campaign may have something to do with when you do stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't occur to them. Everything's got to be reversal, admitting they were wrong. They're now doing it, whatever. That's the subtext.
Where's the savvy now?
Yeah.
I don't understand. They always know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, and when it's, I don't know, and in what context, I'm not sure. They do it in this political context all the time, somehow, but this time, no. They were not savvy enough to understand that timing makes a difference.
Right. Speaking of savvy, there's a really interesting couple of articles here. This one's by Michelle Goldberg in WRAL News.
Okay.
TV station, I guess.
Yeah. Is that Raleigh? Raleigh?
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, maybe they say Raleigh. I don't know. I have to check on their accents down there. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe they pronounce it Meriden like we do in Connecticut.
Right.
Anyway, Michelle
Who
Goldberg,
knows?
chilling reason you may never see the new Trump movie.
New Trump movie.
In 2017, when Donald Trump was frustrated, Attorney General Jeff Sessions wasn't protecting him from the investigation into his Russia ties. He exclaimed, "Where's my Roy Cohn?" The uncertain fate of The Apprentice, which is a movie, demonstrates he no longer needs to replace the man because he's got a whole movement instead.
Okay.
She saw The Apprentice. It was at Cannes.
Cannes. I don't know.
The film,
I've
which
never known.
received an extended standing ovation and mostly appreciative reviews when it premiered, is a classic story of a mentor and his protege, chronicling how Trump first learned from and later surpassed his brutal Machiavellian fixer, Roy Cohn. The performances are extraordinary. Unfortunately, you may not get a chance to anytime see it soon, at least in the U.S. Distributors have bought the rights to The Apprentice in Canada, the UK, France, Germany, Japan, and many other countries, but the filmmakers have yet to secure a deal to release it here, either theatrically or on streaming services. Negotiations are ongoing, and it could still happen. But some established distributors might simply be reluctant to take on The Apprentice because they think political films are money losers. But The Apprentice is a far buzzier film than Vice was, which was considered to be a Dick Cheney biopic major flop.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it appears from industry reporting that the movie industry is less worried about finding an audience than about poking the MAGA bear. As Puck's Matthew Baloney wrote after talking to potential buyers, quote, "Several that really like the film are still out on The Apprentice in part because of the politics of the moment. Trump attacked the film, and unfortunately it appears Hollywood right now doesn't have the stomach to release the film and take him on." If you want to end up in the MAGA movement's crosshairs the way Bud Light and Disney did, and as one distribution executive told Variety, any company that wants to be sold or merged with another company would be hesitant to touch The Apprentice because of the possibility that should Trump be reelected, his regulators will be punitive. So, business is out for themselves. That's always the case. You have to expect that. That's what businesses do. That's their reason for being. And so they act the way they act. But, it is too bad. And I'm just surprised nobody can find a way.
I am shocked at that myself. Like, again, where's the savvy? Every day I'm reading about, well, it's difficult to figure this out, but if you really, really dig and you do a couple months worth of research, you can figure out that Donald Trump owns the golf course in Bedminster, New Jersey, but it's owned through 17 shell companies. Nobody's got shell companies. You can't have it. How about, what about the guy, the sexual harasser, rapist guy? Harvey Weinstein. He could do it, right? This would not damage his reputation. It might even burnish it. Well,
I don't
maybe
know
he
if he's
doesn't have
still in
control of his
business
money.
anymore.
Yeah, maybe not. But surely someone can come up with something. All right, it's a shell company. It's been formed for the purpose of distributing this movie, and all the investors are secret. You can hide your political donations, but you can't hide, a movie being distributed. If you're worried about that, go ahead. Come on. Or I guess if you have to put it in a theater, the theater might be attacked.
Might. You never know. Anyway, moving
lazy.
on. Some things happened last week that we should catch up on. But, some of it we've already covered. This is a really interesting piece by Jennifer Rubin talking about the contrast between the Hunter Biden and the Trump trials. They were a litmus test, and only the Bidens passed.
Oh.
President's family rallied in support of one of their own. Trump family members were conspicuously absent, and goes on to point out that Biden's compassion and his strength in supporting Hunter Biden and his family supporting Hunter Biden should make a contrast with normal people, even though the MAGA people can't appreciate it. Yeah. And Jill Lawrence wrote something similar for Father's Day.
Oh.
About how if you're looking for the strong president, Biden's the one. Look how he handled everything about Hunter Biden, as opposed to running away from it the way Trump did.
Right.
So, very interesting contrast. Does that matter? I think it does with people. This is not something you pick up on polls. Polls don't ask about this. But character matters. And there's two aspects to Trump voters. There's those that say, I know everything about him. I know who he is. I appreciate the fact that he's a rotten, dirty scoundrel. I just don't like the other guy. And then there's people who say, no, he's not really like that. It's Biden who's the crook. It's Biden who's the thief. It's Biden who stole the election, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. The latter are what Peter Wenner was talking about. There's all too many of the former, however, who just don't really get it. And I said my hot take on Twitter, I said my hot take is that people who say, stop telling me about how bad Trump is, tell me why I should vote for Biden. First of all, don't really understand how bad Trump is. And second of all, don't really want to hear about Biden. So, don't waste your time with folks like that. That's a troll.
Okay.
That's a sea lion.
Yeah. I can't remember the last time I wasted any time on somebody who asked me that question. Why should I vote? Why should I stay away from Trump and vote for Biden? You're talking to the wrong person. I'm not going to tell you anything. Forget it. But
meanwhile,
good. Yes.
Really interesting piece in the New York Times. 1 week that revealed the struggles of the anti-abortion movement. The movement looks for a path forward. Is the goal the absolute abolition of abortion in our nation? This comes on the heels of the Southern Baptist Convention saying that they're absolutely opposed to IVF, and they're trying to find common ground on where they should go. At a lunch at the Southern Baptist Convention this week, Tom Askell, a prominent conservative pastor from Florida, bemoaned what the fragmentation meant for their cause. The most important thing is, can we agree on a goal? Is the goal the absolute abolition of abortion in our nation? For decades, the movement had honed a strategy to achieve a singular goal, ending a constitutional right to abortion. Now they have it. The dog that caught the car. Republicans are trying to win a presidential election without the rallying cry of ending abortion. And while abortion opponents dominate many conservative state houses and courts, their efforts to go further have occasionally backfired. Republicans in swing states, prominent Senate candidates, and even Trump have all backed away from the anti-abortion agenda for fear of more political fallout. And even in anti-abortion strongholds, control is slipping. In Arizona, for example, anti-abortion adherents make up the bulk of the Republicans' elected officials, elected to the state legislature. But this spring, they narrowly lost their heated fight to reinstate a near-total abortion ban from 1864. Right? So we're at a reckoning point. Well, we are.
Yes.
Now, you have another election like the 2022 midterms, said Marjorie Dannenfelser, who's president of the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. You have another election like the 2022 midterms, she said, and all the ballot initiatives are a moot point. While disappointed in these results, she finds lessons in the long-term vision of her movement, which historically refuses to give up even amid major setbacks. The hidden reality of the pro-life movement is determination. It'd be unrealistic to think it'd be a straight line to success. So they're there. They're always going to be there. We totally understand that. but you just have to keep beating him at the ballot. So the idea that, the next president is going to appoint one or two Supreme Court justices is like a big deal. Nobody paid attention to that when Hillary said it in 2016.
I don't understand. But okay.
But she's a girl. Biden's a boy, and he's going to say it. And so
maybe that's it. That could be. And of course, yes, the alarm has been rung and everybody is somehow now awake to it. You can't, it doesn't surprise me that you can't get people to do advanced preventative work. But then once, the pandemic hits, now I will learn to.
Now I understand why it's a big deal.
Right. Yeah. So
now I understand why we should spend the money.
Right. So that's not unusual, I guess. But okay, at least people are awake.
We used to say about pandemics, you can't prepare for a hurricane when the wind starts to blow. You got to do it beforehand.
Yeah, too late. All right. Now they know, and okay. So we wait.
And one more thing here. This is from Matt Iglesias. Matty Y.
Yes, right. Matt Y. Why, Matt? Why?
Why, Matt? Trump's presidency was a huge mess. Nostalgia for his time in office is really dumb.
Thank you.
That's his headline. In a funny way, his tendency to muse about policy ideas that don't make any sense and reflect total lack of comprehension of the issues relates to one of his political strengths. Most people don't pay much attention to politics and have relatively low levels of policy knowledge. Swing voters tend to be below average in their level of interest in politics and policy, so Trump, by being not just ignorant but disinterested, comes across as more in touch with them than a typical politician.
Okay.
But in most cases, you wouldn't hire somebody for a job if you had no idea what he was talking about.
Right.
You'd probably worry if you hired someone like that, he'd do a bad job. And when Trump did get hired, he did a terrible job.
He did do that.
By the time he left office, he was deeply unpopular because people saw, and this was before Dobbs, that he wasn't good at it. Since then, Biden's become unpopular because he didn't pivot fast enough in the face of inflation. But I also think a lot of people have forgotten what a bad job Trump did, thanks in part to a mix of delusions and deliberate myth-making, but mostly because of a strange tendency to hold him to an unusual and inconsistent standard for job performance.
Yes.
Okay. On the economy, Trump says what matters is the results were fine. And on COVID, Trump says that what matters is that he said the right ideas. Be less cautious.
Right. Wrong idea, in fact.
At the time.
Yeah.
Yes. And Biden gets no credit for rapid job growth because that's just the natural unwinding. But he's personally to blame for every cent of inflation because that's totally unrelated to COVID. And the unemployment itself wasn't Trump's fault because it was the virus. But Trump, rather than the collapse of the labor market, deserves credit for the halt in the flow of asylum claims. It makes no sense. And it's worth taking a break from wrangling over whether January 6th was technically an insurrection or exactly what Trump meant when he suggested using disinfectant on people's lungs and zooming out to the part where he was just bad at what he did.
Yeah.
So, detailed column. Very nice. All true. Oh, and just as a reminder.
Yes. What?
This is Sam Brody writing in the Globe a couple of days ago. They were fake electors for Trump in 2020, now in Milwaukee, that horrible city, by the way.
Yes.
Where the Republicans are meeting for the convention.
Horrible.
They'll get to help him make the official 2024 nominee. So all these fake electors, they're going to be the delegates.
Yeah, that's the case. There are one or two states said that they wouldn't allow it, but and then some states said, well, I don't know if they were speaking of the convention, but they did say, well, you're not allowed to be electors again.
Well, in response to a request for comment, Republican National Committee spokesperson Anna Kelly said state delegations are made up of delegates elected by their peers.
Right.
At this group, well, the peers are all crooks.
Yes.
So this group of fake electors, some of whom are facing criminal prosecution, will occupy the party's innermost circle. That this is true is a potent symbol of how 2020 election denialism has moved to the core of the modern Republican credo.
Yes.
To Trump's critics, it's a troubling sign of institutional GOP disregard for the legal fallout. And if Republicans are prepared, said Adam Schiff, to nominate a convicted felon to be the candidate, they're going to be completely receptive to other convicted felons, potentially convicted felons, particularly if they're involved in helping them take power.
Yes, right. What's interesting, too,
that's why Kwame Kilpatrick is endorsing Trump.
As you stated that way. Well, a couple of observations about this, but one, right, okay, a bunch of convicted felons are going to get together and nominate a convicted felon, but I'm wondering, like, is this not why, for instance, well, it's not, but I wonder, is this not the logic, or supposed to be the logic behind the Republican drive in most states? We have to make sure that convicted felons lose their right to vote, and presumably they were the outward logic, the non-racist logic, the true logic was racism. But I guess they thought, well, if convicted felons can vote, why they'll vote a convicted felon into office. And now, of course, it's their objective to do exactly that. So I guess that lays it bare. Oh, we are white convicted felons. That is the difference.
Right. So who are Trump supporters? Kwame Kilpatrick, convicted Detroit mayor, Rod
Blagojevich. Yeah, the other convicted Democratic
Illinois
guy.
governor. It's amazing.
I assume that Trump is calling Bob Menendez to say, if you get convicted, will you
probably a
support
couple
me?
of governors from Connecticut I could think of.
Oh, yeah, all right. So, anybody who's been convicted, who's a Democrat, I guess they can approach him. And Trump is weird about that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Trump were to somehow find himself back in the White House. I hesitate to say win the election, but find himself back in the White House and Menendez is convicted. I mean, he trolled everybody with the Blagojevich thing. Like, I'm going to pardon him. And there was no real advantage in it for him either. He was just sort of doing it to make people say.
But in retrospect, what he was doing is he was setting up Democrats for Trump.
I guess. There's only two
and in
of
the case
them,
of Kwame Kilpatrick, black Democrats for Trump.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know how influential those
By
guys
the way,
are.
I was reading Melissa Murray, black academic, pointing out you mentioned the black church that Trump went to over the weekend. Mm-hmm. And she said, 3 ways this was not a real black church.
Okay.
Okay, number 1, nobody was fanning themselves. Number 2, there were no children sleeping through a 45-minute homily.
Oh, boy. Okay, yeah, I can see that.
And number 3, there were no black people.
Well, that's... See, now, okay, it's for comedic effect, but that was number 1 with me.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah, it didn't look like one, and the picture I saw, it kind of looked like maybe a hotel lobby more than...
So what happened is the way I heard the story... Mm-hmm. is that he had this rally in the black church and nobody was going to show up. So the local conservative people put out the word, we need people to show up in this church. So they did. So they were all their MAGA folks, but of course they were all white.
Yes, even though they were wearing Blacks for Trump T-shirts.
Yep.
Yes. Well,
but Ben Carson was there, so that made up for everything.
Oh, okay. Well, that's one. There were some, I'm sure.
Also,
they were actually
Byron, whatever his name is, from Florida,
right?
On the long list, not the short list, on the long list for vice president.
I guess so.
The latest word is Doug Burgum is the leading candidate for Trump's vice president.
Blacks for Burgum.
You know why?
Why?
He's totally innocuous. You can't remember his name. He fades in the background. In no way, shape, or form will he eclipse, Trump's sun. He will not be the moon that stands in front of him.
Oh,
and gives you, weird effects.
Yeah, okay. I can believe that.
All the others you can think of, whether it's J.D. Vance or, any of them, really, including Stefanik, have a thing about, I want my own announcements and I make a lot of noise and so on. Even Tim Scott. But Burgum is completely innocuous and can fade into the shrubbery like Homer Simpson.
Very Pence-y feeling to him.
And that's what Trump likes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did the first time. Then he wanted to execute him. But aside from that, I wondered, though, we went through the old list. I saw an email that I ignored in my inbox here from The Hill, promoting one of their stories. This one being Rubio's name rises towards top of Trump's VP shortlist, which I just initially dismissed as, well, that's just Rubio trying to make it seem like he's important again. Although, of all the people who have run for president or were vying for vice president, he may be the only one previously on the list besides Burgum who's also done a good job showing that he's without influence and totally submissive to Trump, and poses no
but he's a Florida man,
possibility of. Yeah, I guess that's true. That's an issue, but Constitution doesn't count anymore.
I like the concept that somebody brought up.
Yeah,
and said no. Picking Marco Rubio would be the perfect thing for Trump because he would humiliate Rubio by making him move. So it would be a twofer.
Something. Yeah, I guess that's a possibility. And I mean, because of Trump and who he is and the things that he's done and did in 2020, I don't even know if I don't know how long to spend on the discussion of, okay, well, the reason it's bad for the president and vice president to be from the same state, they say it's prohibited. It's not that it's prohibited. It's that you can't get that state's electoral votes because everybody has to cast their electoral votes for president and vice president of different states. Now, I don't know whether it's that Florida can't then cast its votes or that nobody can cast the votes for both of them.
Loses. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I think what's more likely is that, and it's got nothing to do with whether you can't.
Yeah.
Trump would say, I have selected Marco Rubio. Of course, he'll have to move, but that's okay. Rubio moves, and then Trump says, I changed my mind, it's Burgum.
You could do that.
Be so typical Trump. You ran against me. I just want to humiliate you.
Maybe. Yeah, that's a thought. Now, more than I think about it, I think the constitutional prohibition would be that you wouldn't be able to elect Rubio as vice president, presumably in the end. But then again, if you can forge electoral vote certificates, is what I was getting at. If you can do that, then I guess you can do anything.
If Trump wins, there's no constitution, so I don't know why we're having this discussion.
Yeah, exactly. What it comes down to is
all
the things
I'm going to select him anyway.
Yeah.
Make me change my mind.
Right. So, anyway, that is of interest. And the fact that they're, of course, sending all the fake electors to their convention is interesting as well. I assume they'll all be killed by gangs when they go to that horrible, horrible city that they all believe has been burned to the ground somehow. But it's the same people over and over again. Is that the reason that happened is because the people who end up being electors tend to be top party people for that state. So the state chair or some particularly prominent party personage, you will select them from among, all the Republicans in your state to be your electors. And those are, of course, the natural attendees to the Republican or Democratic National Convention. It just so happens that ordinarily, I think probably, the other party, the Democrats, would say, if you're in huge legal trouble, we can just find another person. There are other people who want to go and wear silly hats and go to parties. We'll find another one. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's but in the Republican Party, they're rewarding that. We're martyrs. We may be in prison at the time of the convention, but martyrs nonetheless. And they don't need anybody there to cast votes or do anything, and they don't formulate party policy or adopt a platform. Last time they just skipped it entirely. So there's really nothing to do but, mingle and go to parties. So, it's not a big deal. Send real criminals. Empty the prisons and send them to the Republican National Convention. Will make no difference. Plus, you might even sell some extra T-shirts. So, all right. Well, that is, it's good to know about them, but it will make no difference to most of them. And of course, normies don't watch the convention. And you don't see the convention floor all that often either.
Which is too bad, because you'd learn all about calamari and Everett Island.
Oh, that part is nice, yes. But it'd be interesting if they showed the floor of the Republican National Convention and it was all convicts and criminals. And they're just robbing one another all the time.
Right.
That would make for compelling television. America loves a crime drama.
Absolutely.
All right.
Anyway, that's a story.
Very
that's
good.
All I got.
That's plenty.
But that's
We're
okay.
almost
It's
here.
9:57. Almost.
Yeah, almost. Right. Well, okay, it isn't. It's 9:56, and our alarm goes off at 9:58, so it will be 9:57. Won't make a damn bit of difference. It'll just be a minute
the alarm
closer.
went off. You'll just keep talking. But still,
right.
Thank you for playing those clips. I think it's important for people to hear Trump's incoherence, and I think there'll be more of that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And it's good that Biden is calling him a criminal in his ads.
Yes, that's good, and I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying seeing people, on the one hand, predict that this would happen, and then seeing it actually happen, where people are saying, all the people who have been saying, I want him to say he's a convicted felon, why won't he say it? And then he says it. Oh, yeah, well, why won't he put it in an ad? And then he puts it in an ad. Well, why won't he
this, that,
spell it in pepperoni on a
it's
Domino's pizza? Yeah, right. Anyway, it worked, like many other things, right? Why won't he forgive student loans? He did. Why won't he invest in infrastructure? He did. What about phasing out fossil fuels and increasing investment in solar? Okay, we'll do that too. But still, he hasn't done. Why no soft serve ice cream for me while he's doing that? Well, if you contribute, you want to win the contest, you can go to Rehoboth Beach and have ice cream with him. If you're like, damn it, everything I say he should do, he does, and then I look like. Oh, well, of course, you could spin it as you look like a genius, a political prognosticator. Could try that. All right. Well, we'll see if perhaps by Wednesday they will have done this. All right. Almost time for us to have the alarm go off and then wait 30 seconds and then play the music. But I appreciate, there it is. Okay. All the big roundup. We got most of the big time stories, out on the record. That's good work. Thanks, Greg.
Okay. Take care.
You too. And we'll see you on Wednesday. And I can spend a few minutes talking over, half a minute, talking over the music and teasing the good stuff to come next. Alex Jones had a bad weekend. That's always good news.
Always good news. And
really looks like he... although it looks now like the bankruptcy courts will...
they'll preserve his business,
yeah.
But personally, he's going to have to pay any money he personally has.
Yeah,
that's
was
fine.
rough.
And that way, the families get it faster.
Yep, that's true. Looked like they were going to maybe even threaten to liquidate the business, but they said, no, we can milk it and send the money to the families. Okay.
Ready. Take care.
Very good. All right, see you Wednesday. And we'll see the rest of you in, 1 minute. We'll never see you, but you'll hear us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. Okay, let's see, where were we here? I was just looking through the news about Alex Jones, and I think there was some development over the weekend that changed the nature of the thing. It must have happened on Friday, because courtroom activity like this wouldn't happen over the weekend. But as we approached the end of the week, the word was, okay, look, Alex Jones and his personal fortune and his business empire are in real danger of being liquidated in order to pay the families who he owes money to in the historic, gigantic judgment against him from the Sandy Hook families. And first I have the NPR report of it from June 14th. Which I think was prior to the final word from the judge. And I guess this, somewhere I have, here we go. All right, this is a New York Times article that, it's also dated the 14th, but it seemed to have, maybe they both are updated. That's it. Okay, so they both have the same information now, but I think the one that the headline correctly states the current state of things is the Times one. Judge orders sale of Alex Jones's personal assets, but keeps InfoWars, his stupid, is it TV or radio or both? InfoWars show in business. The ruling will allow the conspiracy theorists to continue broadcasting on InfoWars while the Sandy Hook families pursue payment of $1.4 billion in defamation damages. I don't know how he's ever going to generate that kind of money for them. And I wonder, I imagine the families are interested in getting paid, true. I wonder whether they have any feelings about, I'd rather take a smaller amount from the liquidation of both his personal assets and his business assets and shut the business down than allow it to continue to operate and then, but then, avail themselves of the revenue stream, given that the revenue stream is produced by the very conspiracy theory content that they're suing over in the first place. Like, I don't want you to do the things that generate cash for InfoWars anymore. I want you to stop. And then I want you to give me all the cash that you have generated. But I don't want you doing this thing anymore. I'm not certain it's a great suggestion, but this is Elizabeth Williamson has more organized thoughts about the facts of what's happening anyway. And she has, in addition to covering this for the New York Times, has written a book about the whole situation. So she's familiarized. She's very familiar. Familiarized. I don't know how I feel about that construction. Anyway, she's familiar with what's going on there. I assume. I mean, I haven't read the book. Maybe it sucks. I really don't know. I don't want to give an endorsement without there being a good reason for it, but I have no reason to believe it does suck. Anyway, how about that for an introduction? It's a good thing she's not here as a guest. A Houston bankruptcy judge on Friday ordered the personal assets of the InfoWars conspiracy theorist Alex Jones to be liquidated and sold, with the proceeds distributed among the Sandy Hook families. But the judge spared Mr. Jones from having to shutter his InfoWars business empire, which seems like a dodge to me, and also I think will encourage him to insist that most of his personal assets are in fact owned by InfoWars and therefore shouldn't be liquidated. And we'll see whether this judge is tough on him or not. The ruling will allow Mr. Jones to continue broadcasting on InfoWars while the families continue to pursue payment to the enormous defamation damages awarded to them. The outcome sharply divided the Sandy Hook families, as I might have guessed had I actually decided to, instead of giving my own opinion, if I had guessed at what their opinions might be. All right. Anyway, families who sued Mr. Jones in Texas favored Friday's decision, which will keep Mr. Jones on the air, but allow them to potentially receive more in damages from the InfoWars income. Families who sued Mr. Jones in Connecticut favored settling for less money and shutting Mr. Jones down, although they acknowledged he would not be silenced entirely. He could just restart, I suppose, as something else. Mr. Jones is appealing the judgments against him, a fight that is expected to take years, which is also horrible because this has already taken years. Estimates in court filings place the value of Mr. Jones's personal assets at less than $5 million, nowhere near the $1.4 billion that juries in Texas and Connecticut awarded the families in late 2022. Dividing $5 million by the plaintiffs who are entitled to damages comes to less than $250,000 each. But that does not include substantial bankruptcy-related legal and administrative costs, which are paid first. The judge, that, in other words, they'd get less than $250,000 apiece once all the expenses are paid. The judge's decision came nearly a dozen years already after 20 first graders and 6 educators died in the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. You know where it is, Newtown, Connecticut, in December of 2012. By the way, it was noted over the weekend that the survivors of, and I guess this would mean among the first graders of the Sandy Hook shooting were graduating from high school right about this time. And it might even have been last week. And another poignant moment for Newtown and the class members, I'm sure. Mr. Jones spent years spreading lies that the massacre was a hoax aimed at confiscating Americans' firearms. It's been a great hoax. We've confiscated so many of them. And that the victims' families were actors complicit in the plot. The families suffered online abuse, personal confrontations, and death threats from people who believed the conspiracy theory. The right call is to dismiss this case. Judge Christopher Lopez said in court on Friday afternoon, referring to his decision to dismiss the bankruptcy and keep InfoWars in business. The case is one of the more difficult cases I've had, but when you look at it, I think creditors are better served. In 2018, relatives of 10 victims sued Mr. Jones for defamation and were awarded more than $1.4 billion in damages in trials in Texas and Connecticut. As the case is headed to court in 2022, Jones's company declared bankruptcy. Jones declared personal bankruptcy soon after. The families who sued him in Connecticut and Texas agreed with the judge's ruling that Jones's personal assets should be liquidated under Chapter 7 of the Bankruptcy Code, and the proceeds from their sale divided among them. Jones has been preparing for that outcome, creating an inventory of property, precious metals, guns, boats, and other possessions in preparation for a sale, including getting the court's permission to sell a 127-acre game ranch in Kingsbury, Texas, valued at $2.8 million. Mr. Jones's lawyer, Vicky Driver, said in court that the property had been sold and the money would be transferred for distribution to the families on day one. That's a quote. But when is day one? That's the next question. The Connecticut and Texas sides divide sharply over how to go after Free Speech Systems, his company. Lawyers for the family who sued Jones in Connecticut, the families of 8 victims in all, favored shutting down the company and liquidating its assets with the money distributed among the family members. The proceeds would be minimal, but lawyers for the Connecticut families argued that closing InfoWars was more important than money. At the end of the day, this was all about holding Alex Jones accountable for his lies and the harm he's done to not just Sandy Hook families, but so many other families in society. Robbie Parker, whose daughter Emily died in the shooting, said in comments texted to the New York Times. Avi Moshenberg, a lawyer for the families who sued in Texas, said in his closing statement that the acrimony among lawyers that were once united against Mr. Jones surprised him. The standard isn't what is the worst possible thing to do to Alex Jones to make him suffer. It's what's in the best interest of the creditors, he said. But of course, economics being what it is, some people value other things more highly than money, believe it or not. But that's the only currency the court can really deal in. Mr. Jones has made a fortune promoting conspiracy theories on his broadcast while hawking diet supplements, survival gear, and other merchandise. By the way, I don't want to say too much about it, but have you seen Alex Jones? Would you buy diet supplements from Alex Jones? What kind of diet? I guess ice cream is supplementing your diet, technically, but I don't think that's what diet supplements is supposed to mean here. Anyway, he has been stirring outrage among his listeners in recent weeks about the Connecticut lawyer's liquidation effort, weeping and shouting about what he has falsely claimed is a government-backed conspiracy to shutter InfoWars and silence him. And just like his gun-grabbing conspiracy, even though there's every reason and there was at one point every chance that they could shutter InfoWars, they still haven't done it. And they still won't. And it wouldn't be a government conspiracy even if they did. Anyway, on he goes. I'm kind of in the bunker here, and don't worry, I'll come back. He growled probably, but he said on his InfoWars shows earlier this month, Jones's lawyers said Friday that InfoWars broadcasts in recent days resulted in record sales of his products to $1 million a week, about a 40% increase. So I guess there's really some merit to keeping it open as a cash cow. It's just a question of how quickly and how thoroughly can they then seize those assets and distribute them to the families. It'll be, of course, insult added to injury if he can pocket those profits and sit on them for years while the courts try to unwind the mechanism by which he's shielding those assets and give them to the families. Anyway, Mr. Jones has also been urging potential purchasers of his diet supplements to buy them instead from his father, whose supplements line is called Dr. Jones's Naturals. Mr. Jones's father has been a financial backer and business advisor to InfoWars for decades. The Connecticut lawyers used these statements in court to underscore their argument that he could not be trusted to work in good faith to pay the families if left in control of his business. He just, buy them from my dad, and then the money can be sent to me later, but it won't be confiscated by these families. Lawyers for the families agreed that regardless of the judge's decision, Jones would eventually regroup under another business name. They could go after him for those earnings too because of an earlier court decision that allows the families to pursue him for the rest of his life for what they are owed. Well, that's a good decision. Mr. Moschenberg said the lawyers would continue to push for a pledge from Mr. Jones that he will not lie about the shooting. Oh, okay. Mentioned the victims or their families again on his show, a priority for all the families. There's been a lot of talk about whether Jones would regain control of his business, but the reality is he's never really lost it, Judge Lopez said on Friday. He's really lost it, but not the company. You get what I mean. At one point in his remarks, the judge struggled to compose himself, declaring there are no words to describe the impact on the families of Mr. Jones's years of defamatory lies about them. He said he regretted issuing his ruling at the start of Father's Day weekend, but here we are. All right. And here we are. Now we know what's going on with Alex Jones, and I guess we're up to date on that. And the debate, let the debate begin over whether or not this is the appropriate approach. All right, let's see. A couple of other items to share with you, and let's see, which direction shall we go in? This might be of some interest given the story that Greg shared with us with respect to the Wisconsin, was it with the Wisconsin delegates to the Republican National Convention, or were we talking about a different state here? I got to go and look back at the story that he provided in Skype here. Yeah, here we are. They were false, fake electors for Trump in 2020. Do I still have that one open? Maybe not. Let's take a look so we can be sure about that. Oh, yes, it's the Boston Globe, so I might not be able to even take a look at that. Well, at any rate, I know that the where is there? Maybe if I pocket it, I'll be able to look at the pocket version of this and see then. But of course, it means opening up yet another window to see. But at any rate, even if they're not, let's see, they'll be fake. They were fake electors for Trump in 2020. Now in Milwaukee, they'll get to help make him the official 2024 nominee. Nearly 4 years ago, 84 Republicans, so multiple states, 84 Republicans across 7 states were, of course, fake electors. And now some of them are playing a role in something else, Trump's effort to return to the White House in 2024. At least 17 people who participated in fake elector schemes will be present as official GOP delegates or alternate delegates, according to publicly available records and a Globe review of the delegate selection process. In total, 5 fake electors from Nevada, 3 from Arizona, 3 from Pennsylvania, 2 from Michigan, 2 from Wisconsin, 1 from Georgia, and 1 from New Mexico are headed to the convention. And again, that's mostly because they're Republican officials and haven't been booted from those offices either. All right, so there's that. And then, this is interesting. This time they put in a graphic in here of the real electoral ballot from the state of Arizona and then the fake one. And that's probably the one that they did probably among the least work done in trying to make it look like it was actually real. They really, literally, they have a nice big, long parchment with a foil seal and everything, and the state seal up top and the Gothic lettering, state of Arizona, and the real one. And the fake one is literally just, a Google Doc. It just looks like something which is what it is. They typed up on the computer. Some of the states made efforts to make it look like they had official letterhead and everything. The Arizona effort is quite slapdash. Anyway, good. That makes it that much easier to spot as a fake. So anyway, as I mentioned, Wisconsin was a part of this, but it's spread over several states. Only 2 of the fake electors from Wisconsin, but I thought that the fake electors from Wisconsin, I think Wisconsin is the one that said we're not going to be able to. You're not going to be allowed to be electors again, unless that was Arizona. And maybe because you did such a bad job faking the document last time, we can't let you try it again the next time. You got to do a better job forging the document. But in the meantime, Democracy Docket has this story written by Matt Cohen, who informs us as of last week that the Wisconsin Supreme Court had suspended a particular Trump attorney from the Judicial Committee. What is it? What does it do? I don't know. Maybe it's explained in the story. If not, we'll figure it out. The Wisconsin Supreme Court temporarily, because they got to figure out, are we going to do this on a permanent basis? I don't know. Do we have the right guy? Temporarily suspended Donald Trump attorney Jim Troupis, getting his due in this case, from his position on the court's committee overseeing judicial conduct for his role in a fake electors scheme during the 2020 election. Judicial conduct is a hot topic at the moment, although everybody's focusing, of course, on the United States Supreme Court. But out in Wisconsin, as they do in every state, they have their own state committee. And it's, made up of practicing attorneys and others, I'm sure. But yeah, I guess this would be one of the official bodies in front of which you'd have to appear if someone were making formal charges against a member of, or a judge on the bench in Wisconsin. And of all people to have sitting in judgment of you, Jim Troupis. Well, that can't stand, at least not for very long. So temporarily suspended from that job. The Badger State's highest court sent Troupis, a longtime lawyer and former circuit court judge. Wow, I don't think I was aware. We must have read it at some point, but it didn't stick with me that he was a judge. They sent him a notice on June 11th that he has been temporarily suspended from service on the Judicial Conduct Advisory Committee, effective immediately. Troupis was one of 3 people charged last week, which would have been the week before last now, or would now be the week before last, in a scheme to falsely declare former President Donald Trump the winner of the 2020 election in Wisconsin by sending fake electors to Congress to cast their vote. No, they don't really be sent to Congress. Their votes were being sent to Congress. But okay. Troupis, along with Trump attorney Kenneth Chesebro and Trump campaign staffer Michael Roman, were charged with the felony count of forgery for attempting to subvert the results of the 2020 election. According to the charging documents, you know this story, but I'm always keen to hear it again. Chesebro sent 2 memos in the weeks after the 2020 election to Troupis, outlining a plan to send fake state electors to Congress on December 14th, 2020, to cast their votes for Trump and Vice President Mike Pence, rather than the real electors who would cast their rightful votes for President Joe Biden, who won the state of Wisconsin by more than 20,000 votes. There's a couple of inaccurate, characterizations in there. Nobody's being sent to Congress. It's the votes that are being sent to Congress. But okay, beyond that, I think that's enough by way of correction. Troupis then allegedly sent both memos to the White House to keep them in the loop of the plan, according to the charging documents. Yes, all right. I don't think you really had to do anything at all to keep the White House in the loop. It was their plan, but Troupis was appointed by former Governor Scott Walker to fill a vacancy and serve as a circuit court judge in Dane County in 2015, but he did not run for election for a full term. That's interesting. In 2020, Troupis was appointed as a member to the Judicial Conduct Advisory Committee in 2020. Oh, he hadn't committed this crime yet. That's right. The Judicial Advisory Committee that's tasked with issuing advice and opinions on justices and judges' compliance with state code and judicial conduct. That insurrection probably against that code of judicial conduct. He was reappointed to the committee in March of 2023, despite calls to remove him from the position for his role in the fake electors scheme. But eventually they, their conscience, got the better of them, and they said, all right, he was reappointed once we knew that he had really done all this stuff. But as it looks more and more like he'll actually be convicted of it, let's in fact remove him from office. Both Chesebro and Roman were also charged in Georgia for their roles in trying to subvert the election results in the Peach State. Chesebro pleaded guilty in October of 2023 to a felony count of conspiracy to file false documents. The Wisconsin Supreme Court's order to suspend Troupis from his position on the 9-member advice committee is effective immediately, but the order did not state how long the temporary suspension would last or if it would be permanent. What I think they mean by that is it didn't state any length. So now it's unknown for how long this temporary suspension would last or whether it will in fact be permanent. But no, the order wouldn't say whether or not the temporary suspension would be permanent. That would be rather unusual, don't you think? Because then it would be an order with a permanent suspension and not a temporary one. I don't know. That came out weird in the writing, but we made a couple of mistakes along the way anyway. So there you go. Democracy docket got a lot going on, and it's hard to keep up, and occasionally some mistakes will slip through, I am sure. Okay, let's jump back to Pocket. It's going to take us a little while here. Maybe we can go back to the alternative Pocket display and take a look at things that way. Okay. And let's see. Other stories we've got lined up to share. Let's see. What time is it here? 10:23. Can we fit this one in? No, probably not. I do have another submission from Rosalyn MacGregor. And I guess because we mentioned that Donald Trump had recently been in Detroit, we can catch up on the news that, there was another presidential candidate that was recently in Detroit, and it was the other one that's going to be on the ballot. Or even if they try to keep him off the ballot in Ohio, still going to make it, Joe Biden. All right. We'll save that one for after the break, just to make sure that there's space to play it uninterrupted and share some other things here with you. Okay. How about, some of these things are less newsy and more analytical, but will we be able to get through them is the next question. Let's see. Why not try this one? This is of some interest here. It's a little bit dated at this point. It was from June 7th, but it's at least still June. I thought this was of some interest. Retired Judge David Tatel issues a stark warning about the Supreme Court. Well, that's timely still. Anne Marimo is the writer of this piece for the Washington Post, and it cites his memoir in which the retired D.C. Circuit judge reflects on his career and the high court, regret about initially hiding his blindness, and his love for his guide dog Vixen. So a little humanizing material about David Tatel. And well, at any rate, he's got something to say on his way out the door, basically, about the Supreme Court. A retired federal judge, and he's not the only one, but this time Tatel has delivered an unusually stark warning about the Supreme Court and the future of the planet and democracy. Those are all pretty important things, which he says is imperiled by a conservative majority. It is amassing power for itself while weakening minority voting rights and making it harder for the federal government to protect the health and safety of Americans. In a memoir published this month, David Tatel joined other retired judges who have been publicly critical of the Supreme Court at a time when public opinion and confidence in the institution is at historic lows, and some justices have been consumed by ethics controversies. Do you know which ones? Well, it's not Justice Stephen Breyer, who retired in 2022 and who also shared some more circumspect concerns, or rather, his concerns were more circumspect in their scope, I guess, about the court's direction in his new book, which is not the one we're talking about here, Reading the Constitution, Why I Chose Pragmatism, Not Textualism. Then there's also, of course, J. Michael Ludwig, a long-retired conservative appeals court judge who has critiqued the Supreme Court decision to take up the former president's claims, Trump's, that he's immune from criminal prosecution for his efforts to remain in power after he lost the 2020 election. Tatel's commentary, though, was notable because he only recently left the bench and because he prided himself on judicial restraint and for his friendship with judges nominated by Republican presidents while serving on the influential federal appeals court in D.C. He is unrestrained, however, in Vision, a memoir of blindness and justice, offering an unsparing take on the Supreme Court for chipping away at past precedent, most notably overturning Roe v. Wade in 2022 and restricting the use of race in college admissions last year. The 82-year-old judge, a leading candidate for the high court during the Clinton administration, writes that he stepped down from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit in January, in part because he was tired of having his work reviewed by a Supreme Court that seemed to hold in such low regard the principles to which I've dedicated my life. That will probably upset a lot of lawyers, but judges in particular. It was one thing to follow rulings I believed were wrong when they resulted from a judicial process I respected. It was quite another to be bound by the decisions of an institution I barely recognized. Conservatives have dismissed such critiques, of course, saying they're based on disagreement with the outcome of the court's rulings and its rapid shift to the right with the addition of 3 justices nominated by Trump. But I think it's deeper than that, and he'll prove it after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. We continue with this article, although now I see flashing by on my screen, I did find the Politico article about Glenn Youngkin that I referenced that I don't actually feel like reading on the air because it's pointless, but at least I can share the article with you now and you can take a look at it for yourself if you want to waste that sort of time. But anyway, just to prove that the article actually exists more than anything else. But I was reading David Tatel's, the review of his memoir, and from which they extracted his deep concerns about what this Supreme Court is up to. Here's where we left off. Conservatives were dismissing his critiques, saying, well, he just disagrees with the outcome. But of course, the quote that he provided previously was, it's one thing to follow rulings that I think are wrong when they result from a judicial process I respected, but it's quite another to be bound by the decisions of an institution I barely recognized, i.e. one that didn't have any actual logical legal processes backing up what they were saying, or when they did offer something, it was something absurd that isn't a real, type of judicial analysis, making things up. Originalism. I am going to divine the intent of the founders and channel them and decide what I think they really meant by the things that they put down there, or what did they mean to include in the Constitution but didn't, etc., etc. And this is just not convincing for Tatel or most other people. Tatel calls for term limits, in fact, for Supreme Court justices. 18 years on our highest court is long enough, and I think that should do plenty, and describes conversations about retirement that he had with his friend, the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the political repercussions of her decision to remain on the court until her death. Lots of people have brought that up before. He also confesses to being a little guilty of gamesmanship in timing his departure from the bench. There is no doubt, he wrote, that Ginsburg's decision not to retire before the 2016 election contributed to Roe's demise because the justice's death in 2020 allowed Trump to nominate Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who was the fifth vote to eliminate the nationwide right to abortion. Tatel recalls how Ginsburg pulled him aside during a dinner at his home before Trump was elected to express annoyance with the commentators calling for her retirement while President Barack Obama was still in the White House and could choose her successor. I sometimes wonder if the public pressure to retire made Ruth even more stubborn. She was never one to succumb to pressure, Tatel observed. His announcement in 2021 that he would take a lighter caseload, or senior status, gave President Biden plenty of time to get Judge J. Michelle Childs confirmed as Tatel's successor before he officially stepped down in January. The judge's memoir offers a behind-the-scenes look at the art of judging, his career as a civil rights lawyer working to desegregate public schools, and a deeply personal reflection on how he coped with and initially hid, this is interesting, his declining eyesight from a retinal disease. He became blind in his early 30s. Looking back, I regret my refusal to discuss my blindness and the shame I felt when others mentioned it, he wrote. I now see that I was so wrapped up in my all-consuming effort to be normal, quote-unquote, normal, it's in closing scare quotes, that I missed another opportunity to be upfront about my vision and help dispel stereotypes about the capabilities of people with disabilities. I could see that. It's also something of a love story, detailing his devotion to the German Shepherd guide dog, Vixen, who changed his life in 2019. President Bill Clinton picked Tatel to succeed Ginsburg on the D.C. Circuit in 1994, so I guess part of their ongoing relationship as friends and colleagues there. He was her replacement on the D.C. Circuit. He became a leading voice on the liberal-leaning appeals court, also known for his strong relationships with Republican appointees on the bench. Collegiality, he wrote, has nothing to do with having lunch or attending sporting events together, activities the justices have cited as evidence of their comity, and everything to do with respecting each other, listening to each other, and sometimes even changing our minds. The loss of public trust in the Supreme Court is perhaps no surprise, he wrote, arguing that overturning Roe in just the second term after Barrett replaced Ginsburg looked like judges doing politics, or like judges making good on the campaign promises of the president who appointed them. Neutral judging fosters public trust in the rule of law, and that trust, in turn, gives courts their power to protect individual rights, he wrote. Judging that appears based on preordained agendas, not on text or precedent or deference, depletes the reservoir of public confidence. Tatel is most critical of the Supreme Court's rulings under Chief Justice John Roberts to limit the Environmental Protection Agency's power to combat climate change and to weaken protections of the Voting Rights Act, the landmark Voting Rights Act. Tatel wrote the D.C. Circuit's majority opinion in 2012, which upheld a key provision of the Voting Rights Act. A year later, a divided Supreme Court invalidated that very section of the law, which requires states and localities with a history of discrimination, to get permission from federal officials before changing election laws. Tatel called that decision, one of several that have undercut voting protections in recent years, a tragedy for civil rights. It cleared the way for more restrictive measures that disproportionately affect minority voters. In the EPA case, Roberts wrote the majority opinion to cut back the agency's ability to reduce carbon output from power plants. The ruling rested on the major questions doctrine, that too in scare quotes, because it's not a real one, which says Congress must speak clearly when authorizing agency action on significant issues. So vague as to be completely useless, but there it is. Tatel denigrates such doctrines as invented to produce the court's preferred outcome and writes that they have no basis in the Constitution. By affording itself a roving mandate to disrupt any regulatory regime that strikes 5 justices as too major, the court strengthened its own hand at Congress's expense, he wrote. Tatel's critique is timely as the court is set to decide by the end of June whether to scrap a 40-year-old precedent that has required judges to defer to an agency's reasonable interpretations of the statutes it administers. That approach, named for the court's 1984 decision in Chevron USA versus the Natural Resources Defense Council, has fallen out of favor with conservatives concerned that too much power is vested in executive branch bureaucrats without clear authority from Congress. And that was much discussed as we headed into the weekend as well. And I'm not even certain whether that was just preparatory to expecting news on a Chevron case sometime soon, or whether it actually had been issued. But I don't think that it has been. Just lots of talking about will the court discard the Chevron deference standard? And I think everybody is sort of anticipating now that they will. All right. Where were we in this? I got to find my way back to the right tab. There's so many open now. Anyway, we were reading that this is upcoming, and I was, as he was sounding the alarm about it, I wanted to make sure that we didn't have an answer on that yet. The son of a scientist and himself a former high-level official at the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, Tatel takes the opposite view of the government's civil servants. That is to say, from those who want to eliminate Chevron deference. He warns that as the world keeps getting more complex, we need expert agencies more than ever. Anyone concerned with the environment or with safe medicines, unadulterated food, or cars that drive safely, for instance, like maybe even drive themselves safely if that's possible, has very good reason to worry about where this Supreme Court is headed. So, well, that's true. Plus, of course, where the Supreme Court is headed is of interest in how they might treat any potential cases that might come up in the future about how both Congress and judges and the executive branch treat the experts that work for the executive branch. Lots of chatter this morning about yesterday's episode, I guess, aired for the first time yesterday, of John Oliver's, what is it, the name of his show? This week, or last week tonight, or whatever it was. I can't even remember what the name of his show is, but I caught part of it last night as it was airing, and people were excited to see the episode released on the streaming services because they were talking about Trump's, not only his Project 2025 ideas, but they apparently had some extensive clips of interviews of Russell Vogt, who has been the subject of articles we've read in the last couple of days, and his plans for the federal bureaucracy, but specifically Schedule F, the idea that Trump actually did implement eventually, like very, very late in his term, but by executive order, and it was rescinded by Biden. But basically, the creation of a new civil service classification that would basically allow the president to hire and fire at will everybody who worked for the executive branch. And I guess eventually they'll probably say, well, why stop at the executive branch? To hell with the Constitution and the separation of powers. We could probably use these powers to fire judges we don't like too. And if 5 justices say that's okay, then that's okay. But for now, I think they're limiting things to the executive branch. But as part of the episode last night aired by John Oliver, there was also interview footage taken from an interview from another outlet of one of the representatives of federal employees, one of the federal employee unions, I think, was speaking on it, just basically bringing up the point that's made here, or that's hinted at here. You want experts making decisions about all of these things, right? And the idea that you could just replace them all with Trump yes men and say things like, for instance, supposing the nuclear power industry were interested in deregulating the part of the industry that made them spend all that money on safety. Like, screw that. Yeah, if we slowly or even quickly irradiate everybody in the region, that only matters to the extent that you can use it against us in court. But if you can't use it against us in court, then why are we spending all this money on cement to enclose the reactor core when we could do it much cheaper with cardboard? Sounds crazy, and no normal executive branch nuclear regulatory commission bureaucrats, we hate the bureaucrats, but they would say, no, we actually need lead and concrete to try to shield the public from the massive amounts of radiation it would otherwise be exposed to if the core were wrapped in corrugated cardboard, right? Because that's just truth and science. But what if you manage to get people there? And I have the stamp here. I'm said to be the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and I say cardboard is fine, and you sue, and you lose, and you appeal, and you go all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, no, we don't know anything about nuclear power, but we do know this. That guy is the head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and it's valid. He says cardboard, the standard is cardboard. Doesn't matter what science says. Does that make you comfortable? If so, voting for Trump would be the right thing to do, presumably, if you were already so inclined. But if that worries you, or if you think there should be facts involved in any of the scientific decisions that become part of policy in this country, or any other for that matter, then, you're probably going to be opposed to Trump as president. But if you're listening to the show, and this was a similar point he made last night, I don't think anybody here is considering voting for Trump. But if you are, you should change your mind. All right. Well, I thought that was interesting. And speaking of the necessity of regulation, I got another interesting and different direction story to share with you. But let me go back first. I promised you some Rosalyn MacGregor, and I will deliver. As I mentioned, it's only fair, given that we spent time on what Donald Trump did in Detroit, and I don't have any interest in being fair to Donald Trump. It doesn't matter. But what about fairness to the rest of you? You had to hear about Trump in Detroit. What about hearing about good things about Biden in Detroit? Well, as it happens, Rosalyn MacGregor has collected thoughts on that.
Good morning, David. Today's submission is about the reaction to Joe Biden's recent campaign visit to Michigan. In the run-up to his visit, there were many articles filled with concern about Joe's relationship to minority audiences. Afterward, Ebony J.J. Curry, senior reporter for the Michigan Chronicle, wrote a column titled Joe Biden's Enduring Commitment to the Black Community, 6 Decades of Advocacy and Action. She writes, Biden's declaration, quote, I've been a part of the civil rights movement since I was 15, unquote, resonates with the authenticity that few can rival. This long-standing commitment was on full display during the Detroit branch NAACP's 69th annual Freedom Fund dinner. As he took to the stage, the air was thick with anticipation and reverence. Thousands of attendees, voices united, chanted 4 more years, a powerful affirmation of their support for a president who has consistently shown up and shown out for the black community. In a time where efforts to erase black history from the educational curriculum are rampant, Biden's voice cut through the noise with clarity and conviction. They're trying to erase black history literally. They're wrong. They don't understand. Black history is American history. Not a joke. Together we make history. We do not erase history, he proclaimed. These words, more than just rhetoric, were a rallying cry, a reaffirmation that black history and American history are inextricably linked. Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony, Detroit NAACP president, introduced Biden with a heartfelt and evocative testament. Along came a man by the name of Joe Biden who gave a hand to a man to lift him out of the pit. This introduction was more than ceremonial. It was a clear reminder of Biden's role as an ally, a supporter, and a friend to the black community. The significance of the black vote in shaping the future of America was a central theme of Biden's address. You're the reason Kamala Harris is a historic vice president, he reminded the audience. You're the reason Donald Trump is the defeated former president, and you're the reason Donald Trump is going to be a loser again. These statements were not just accolades, but a call to action, a reminder of the power and influence of the black electorate in determining the course of the nation. Biden's administration has been marked by significant achievements that directly benefit the black community, from the largest investment in black communities in decades to efforts to reconnect neighborhoods divided by infrastructure and expanding the Affordable Care Act. Biden's policies have been transformative. His support during the historic UAW strike was a testament to his commitment to labor rights and economic justice, further solidifying his bond with the working class black community. Quote, the Biden administration's accomplishments on black nominations and appointments include a number of firsts, Biden proudly noted. This includes Vice President Kamala Harris, the first black and South Asian woman to hold the office, and other appointments that reflect the diversity and strength of America, such as Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman to sit on the United States Supreme Court. These milestones are not just symbolic, they are indicative of a broader commitment to inclusion and representation at the highest levels of government. Biden's administration has led to historically low unemployment rates among black Americans and created new opportunities for black-owned businesses. Biden's student debt relief plan targets black borrowers who disproportionately carry the burden of educational debt, providing much-needed relief and economic stability. In the realms of justice, health, and housing, Biden has made strides in criminal justice reform, health equity, and equitable home ownership programs. His administration has prioritized police accountability, supported black maternal health, and invested in programs designed to dismantle systemic barriers and promote fairness and justice. Today, the fight for freedom continues. The challenges we face may have evolved, but the core issues remain the same. Voter suppression, economic inequality, and systemic racism still threaten to undermine the progress we have made, but we are not deterred. The black vote remains a powerful tool in our arsenal, a means to effect change and hold our leaders accountable. As we honor the legacy of those who fought before us, we must also look to the future, committed to ensuring that every black voice is heard and every black vote is counted. Our journey is far from over, and together we will continue to march forward, steadfast in our pursuit of true equality and justice for all. Biden's track record, filled with tangible achievements and heartfelt advocacy, speaks volumes. From his days as a teenage activist to his presidency, Biden has consistently championed the cause of black Americans. His policy, speeches, and actions reflect a deep understanding of the challenges faced by black Americans and a relentless drive to address them. As the fight for equality continues, Biden's leadership provides hope and tangible progress towards a more just and equitable society. If there's still a question of what has he done for me lately, the numbers and actions tell the story. Biden's legacy is one of action, of showing up, and of making a difference. As Reverend Wendell Anthony passionately stated, the time to take your souls to the polls is now. Biden's commitment is not just a promise, it is a reality, a testament to his enduring dedication to the black community. That's the word from the horse's mouth on the political lay of the land in Michigan. Back to you, David.
Okay, thanks, Rosalyn, and I appreciate the update. And yeah, good to see what happens when a competent candidate and mentally aware person actually goes to Detroit and can get accolades for it instead of getting weird coverage about how odd it is that he decided to go to a black church and there were hardly any black people visible at the event. Well, okay, just wanted to get that one in there and on the record, and thank you for submitting it. And I mentioned earlier, and I saw a reaction to it from Mighty OCD, who I guess had, I don't know, did you see the episode? Well, you can tell me later whether or not you saw the episode of John Oliver's show last week tonight. I wanted to get that name correct. And yeah, everybody really enjoyed, apparently, this episode about Project 2025. Russell Vogt was a huge part of it, and I think that's what he was saying. That dude is so effing scary. They shouldn't allow him near anything that matters. But there's plenty of people from the Trump administration who will be in the next Trump, quote-unquote, administration, if there is one, no matter what happens with the election. We know about that. who should not be allowed anywhere near anything. And there was prominent play in the episode yesterday, and everyone should see it, but apparently it doesn't get uploaded for American consumption until Wednesday, Thursday or so after it airs, if you didn't catch it. Although I guess you can catch repeats of it on HBO if you've got, is it HBO? I don't even know. Anyway, you can catch it. I have no idea. I watch, it's a great show. I don't make it is HBO. I don't make a habit of watching it all the time because most of the rest of my family can't take that much politics on the television all the time. But it was a good episode. And also prominently featured in the episode yesterday was Johnny McEntee, who will no doubt also have a prominent role in any Trump administration coming up, and shouldn't have had any role that shouldn't have been anywhere near the role he took on. And that was part of the focus of the show. Anyway, you should see the episode. They describe how it was that he came to be, head of White House personnel. It's absurd. And of course, then they were focusing on what is he doing now? And he's spending his time making trolly TikTok videos, making, by the way, points that are so tiresome and boring and have been made 100 million times by arch conservatives before him. But anyway, and he'll be in charge of, he and Russell Vought together will be in charge of implementing this Schedule F and making sure that anyone with any expertise who can, stand in the way, for instance, when the president says, oh, this hurricane totally was going to hit Alabama. They were in the cone. And even though the Weather Service's official prediction, NOAA's official prediction of where this hurricane might hit doesn't include Alabama, I'm embarrassed by having said that it would. And so I will officially, instead of just drawing with a Sharpie, he can say, I officially order NOAA to say that Alabama was in fact in the cone. When they said that it wasn't, they were mistaken. And anybody who says otherwise is fired. It was a good point. And well, anyway, you should see the episode, and you could probably catch it if you want before Wednesday, Thursday on HBO. But if you don't have HBO, you can wait for it to show up on their YouTube channel later on in the week. Okay. But speaking of the necessity of experts and our continuing dependence on them for, keeping us safe in so many aspects of our lives. Here's an interesting story. I probably could have saved this one for Friday, but this one really interested me and was something we should be thinking about all week, I think, and helps explain a ongoing story, the ongoing terrible press that Boeing is getting for their continued difficulties in the aviation incidents over the past couple of weeks and months. This is something I had never thought about. A Guardian headline. I'm not going to be able to get all the way through it, but I'll plant the seed here for you. FAA investigates counterfeit titanium used in some Boeing and Airbus jets. So it's not all about Boeing necessarily. Is this, though, perhaps what's at least partly to blame? What's at the root of some of these issues? I mean, I think it probably couples with some bad management practices, but this is really something I had never thought about. I didn't even know you could make counterfeit titanium. Well, but when you're making a product, aerospace products that depend on titanium, I never really thought about the question of how do you know what you're buying is really titanium? And the answer is, well, mostly government regulation and the ability to sue people over it is what keeps this stuff on the up and up. But guess what? If you're willing to take money and then maybe abscond with it later on, once you're found out that you've been selling counterfeit titanium, then I guess anything can go. This is really wild. An investigation comes after a parts supplier found small holes in material used in manufacturing of jets. The holes from corrosion, which won't happen with real titanium. And it's not so much, I guess it's counterfeit titanium, yes, but they are also counterfeiting the certificates that come along with the titanium, attesting to its purity and authenticity. And we have, I guess, a regulatory scheme in place that says this is how you do. You issue a certificate guaranteeing the authenticity of the titanium, and then you can go and manufacture titanium parts with some degree of certainty that what you're working with is really titanium. But what if you just forge those certificates? This is a huge problem that I had given no thought to. It's just one of those things, those invisible parts of the government that's just supposed to work. And it isn't even necessarily government regulation that is behind running it. But there you go. The FAA is investigating falsified documents that were used to verify the authenticity of titanium used in some recently manufactured Boeing and Airbus jets. The New York Times reported on Friday. The documents are also being investigated by Spirit Aerosystems, which supplies fuselages for Boeing and wings for Airbus, according to the report. Titanium, of course, an important component of the aerospace supply chain, is used to make landing gears, blades, and turbine discs for aircraft. The FAA is investigating the scope of the problem and trying to determine if the short and long-term safety implications to planes that were equipped with those parts, the Times reported, citing a statement from the regulator. The investigation comes after the parts supplier found small holes in the material used in the manufacturing of jets from corrosion, the report added. So there's a lot to it, and you might wonder, well, but don't you think you'll get caught in all of this? And the answer is yes, the system is designed to catch you. But if you are, let's say Russian mobsters interested in selling off titanium stores, or you're selling it off to people who have commodities contracts for the sale of titanium, and I'm not specifically involved in the manufacture of airplanes, I'm just a titanium broker. Do you cut the corners? Do you take the extra profit? Do the people who took that extra profit abscond to Dubai afterwards? I don't know. Wow. Okay. Well, do stay tuned for what follows today, as it's a travel day for justice.
Radio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
Yes, all week he'll be traveling, and so, we'll be under orders to end the show at 11 a.m. sharp, and we'll try and comply with those orders. And a mix of regular and, as he says, irregular programming will follow the show for the rest of the week. Stay tuned for more, and we will see you tomorrow.